Hi everyone, today we'll be having a look at the 802.11 standard, which is the IEEE's standard for wireless LAN communications. It is used to define the medium access control and physical layer specifications for wireless connectivity for fixed, portable and moving stations within a local area. It also offers regulatory bodies a means of standardizing access to one or more frequency bands for the purpose of local area communication. It details the OSI models Layer 1 and Layer 2 protocols to be used for wireless LAN. Radio waves are used at the physical layer, whereas frames are used at the data link layer. There are several types of Wi-Fi standards that exist. A few examples are 802.11b, 802.11g, 802.11n, 802.11ah, and so on. All standards occur in the 2.4 GHz and 5 GHz frequency bands. The frequency band is divided into channels of equal bandwidth. To avoid interference, Wi-Fi devices can be configured to use different channels. Each standard uses different types of frequency modulation techniques. The Layer 2 protocol used by 802.11 is the frame. There are three types of frames, namely management frames used for authentication, the start, tearing down and maintenance of Wi-Fi communications, control frames which are used to ease flow of traffic, for example signal if the medium is clear to send or receive data frames or to acknowledge the receipt of error-free data frames, and data frames to encapsulate the actual data packets that needs to be transmitted. All Wi-Fi devices need to meet legal regulations about transmitter power, channels, and interference. This is defined as reg domain by IEEE. Each country or region, for example the EU, can have its own set of regulations. The 802.11 connection states are not authenticated or associated, authenticated but not yet associated, authenticated and associated. A mobile station must be in the authenticated and associated state before data transmission can occur. The 802.11 association process starts with a probe request from a Wi-Fi enabled laptop. The router will then respond with a probe response. The laptop will try to authenticate to the router. Depending on the authentication used, the router can then ask for a second round of authentication from the laptop. Once authentication is done, the Wi-Fi enabled laptop will send an association request to the router. The router will then respond with an association response packet. Once this is done, data transmission can finally take place. We will now take a closer look at the 802.11 association process in Wireshark. Unfortunately, my laptop is a Windows one, so no packet capture can be done on this. However, as specified by James, we can take the packet capture from the Wireshark 802.11 version 6 appendix file. So I have downloaded the zip file and opened it, and we can just open it on Wireshark by doing file open, and we just need to look for it, open. So as you can see, I now have 802.11, 802.11 beacon frame, association response, so on and so forth. So I have opened the packet capture on Wireshark. As always, we need to find the proper expression or filter to get to what we need and what we want in Wireshark. Thankfully, I have found a website where this is given in details. So the address is as follows, as you can see on the screen. I will provide the link in the description. Now, since the association process starts with probe request, this is the first expression or filter we will apply, or the second filter will be for the probe response, and after probe request and probe response we have the authentication phase. So this is the next filter. After that we have association request, and association response, and finally we will have data frames for data transmission. We hit enter to apply the filters. As you can see, we still have a lot of data. However, I have already gone through this capture before, and I know exactly at what time there is, so I know exactly at what time we need to look at to see the association process. So I will scroll directly to that time. So here we are. We have our client which sent a probe request as a broadcast packet. The router responded with probe response. Next, the client sent the router an authentication packet. The router sent back an authentication packet again. The client, because it didn't receive the authentication packet back from the router within a certain time frame, sent another authentication packet, and it got its response a little bit later. In the meantime, the client sent an association request and got its association response from the router. And as we can see, the client was on the network, authenticated and associated, and it received its DHCP DORA process: discover, offer, request, acknowledge. So I will highlight the whole process, where probe request, probe response from router to client, authentication message from client to router, authentication message from router to client, and again another authentication message from client to router, association request from client to router, the reply of the last authentication message, and association response from router to client. Then we have the data transmission, which in this case was DHCP. We have the DORA process, starting with discover, and then offer, request, and lastly acknowledge. To have a better view of the association process, you can do statistics and flow graph, limit to display filter, maximize. Then I will scroll down to the set time where this occurs. So here we are, progress request from client to the server, but it was on broadcast address because the client didn't know who the server was. Yeah, so from client broadcast, look, sending the probe request on broadcast address. The router sent the probe response. First authentication packet sent from client to router. Router replied with authentication packet, another authentication packet from client to router. We then have the association request packet from client to router, the association response from the router to the client, and then data transmission, basically the DHCP DORA process.